A very commonly used Java class to get input from a user is the scanner. To be able to use the scanner, we must import it first. This can be done with import java.util.scanner semicolon. Just a quick note, this needs to happen at the top of your script, so before the main method. When we talk about floating point numbers, what we're talking about is a real number containing a decimal point. Here's a few examples that I put down already. Miles ran equals 3.1. It's not an integer because an integer would only be able to have 3 or 4, not 3.1. On the same note, kilometers ran is 5.0. Even though that is 5, it is 5.0, and thus it is a double because it has a decimal point. A floating point literal is just like a normal literal, except that it's a decimal number instead, so it has a fractional part. For instance, -1.5, 0.0, 3.16. One of my examples here is actually a 0. That's actually incorrect. That's an integer. It should be 0.0. To use the scanner class and get input from a user, we actually have to initialize the object first. As you can see here on screen, scanner, and we're going to call it myScanner, but you can name it anything where myScanner is. So we'll say scanner, myScanner equals new scanner parentheses system.in semicolon. This is how you initialize a scanner, and this is how you're able to get input from a user after importing it like we did at the very beginning of the video. Let's get a double from the user and overwrite the miles ran variable that we made earlier in the program. Here we are, miles ran equals myscanner.next double. This line basically says we want to overwrite miles ran with the next double that we are given from the user, aka the next decimal point number that we get from the user. We now have a new decimal number in the miles ran variable. Using a floating point constant, let's get the number of kilometers ran. Here we are, kilometers ran. We're going to overwrite that with equals miles ran times 1.609344, which is the conversion rate of miles to kilometers. We're going to output that with a print line statement that says kilometers ran plus the kilometers ran variable, and it will show the decimal points as well. Before we see the output of that, let's talk about doubles versus integers. A double is more useful for things like temperature and distance, whereas an integer is good for things like counting trees, slices of pizza, or street numbers because they're whole numbers. By the way, when using a scanner for integers, it's slightly different than for doubles. Instead of next double, as you can see on this example line, it is actually next int, which is next integer. And then we'll also do a print line here, number of reasons to subscribe, plus the example, which would be an integer. But again, before we go to the output, let's talk a little bit more. Dividing floating point numbers by 0 is bad. Java will either return infinity, negative infinity, or not a number. Well, that's actually abbreviated as NaN, but NaN means not a number. This happens specifically when both numbers are 0.0 or 0.0 divided by 0. It's a bad time. If only one number is 0, then it will be either positive infinity or negative infinity, but do know this is not a good thing. You do not want to aim for infinity, negative infinity, or NaN. Just don't divide by 0. Just like in math, Java doesn't like that. Alright, it's time to put in some numbers and get some outputs. So the first thing that we put on this program was how many miles have we ran. We'll put 6.2, and as you can see, 9.97 kilometers with a bunch of numbers afterwards is shown. That makes sense because that would be a 10K. The next question was how many reasons should you subscribe? We'll put 99. That's a whole number because it's an integer. Now you can see when dividing by a non-zero float by 0, sorry, that was a mouthful, that's infinity. But when both numbers are 0, we get NaN, which, as of course you remember, is not a number. As you saw in the kilometers ran, that was a lot of numbers after the 9. We can actually limit the amount of digits after the floating point number by just using printf instead of print line for a formatted string. Quick note, printf, you actually need to do an escape key n, which is \n, and that will create a new line, because printf will not create a new line for you. And as you can see here, it's the %.2f that should stick out. This is what the printf line is looking for, and that is going to tell it how many digits after the decimal point to print. And after the comma, as you notice there is a comma, you want to put the variable, and that's going to be the double variable or the floating point variable that it's going to limit the number of digits for. Now that we've limited the number of digits after the decimal point, let's do the output again. We'll put 6.2, and you can see that it's 9.9 infinity, And then we'll have to go through the rest of the original outputs because I didn't comment those out. So we'll just say 30 reasons why. And you can see now at the bottom, kilometers ran 9.98. That comes from the first printf statement right there in the middle of your screen. And then the other one says kilometers ran 10.0. And that's because we made it go to only one digit after the decimal point. As you can see, it does round to the nearest whole number, which can be helpful. We've learned a lot today, and I want to make sure that you really get what we're talking about here. Pause the video and try question 1 and question 2. In 5 seconds, unpause the video, and we'll go over the answers. All right, for question 1, the answer is infinity, which you can test out yourself by using a print line statement like this. And question 2 is a little more difficult. You would need to actually create the scanner, which we'll call answer scanner in this one. And then your double would be answer equals answer scanner dot next double. If you only got my scanner dot next double or whatever like that, something close to that, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure you knew that you needed to call the scanner and use the method next double. That's it for this one. I hope to see you guys on my other Java tutorials. We got Java Labs as well. Hit that like button, subscribe button, every single button you see. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.